I would like to talk about something a little different today. Like most of you, I get excited about the constant innovation with technology in the gaming industry. However, there are some downsides that I feel like I must be upfront with you about. I personally haven't seen many thoughts about this, so I would just like to add my own. The thought begins with a question: are high quality games ruining the gaming industry? The first thing you're probably thinking is, no way! How can that be possible? Good graphics have led to beautiful environments and higher levels of immersion. And for the most part, I agree with you. The graphics in games such as the Uncharted series are certainly incredible, and even breathtaking at certain moments. However, there is a huge downside. Back in the early 90s, 16-bit pixel graphics were all the rage. They offered levels of immersion never before seen in a home console. It was the highest point that consoles could reach, aside from the Atari Jaguar, and gamers were in love. But the lower graphics of the time offered one advantage that modern games do not have: less time spent on art design and sound design. Have you seen the credits for Super Mario World? While I'm certain that there are many background people who worked for the game, the credits list is minuscule compared to the games of today. Why is that? Even though Super Mario World certainly required a lot of talent to create, it was a much simpler game compared to today's standards. Nowadays, major gaming studios have hundreds of people working on their games. Why? Because they have to. The 3D environments of today require much more manpower than the two-dimensional games of the past. Looking more recently, there's no doubt that one would probably need more artistic talent to create games today than, say, 10 years ago. The character models and environments back then, while the best they could do, are no comparison to the near lifelike models of today. For a direct comparison, let's look at the Star Wars Battlefront game. Everyone complained about how little this game had in content, but have you seen how well designed the graphics and environments are? I don't think the lack of content in Star Wars Battlefront was because the developers were too lazy, but rather because the level of detail required for each map took much more time than the PlayStation 2-worthy Battlefront 2 game. In the Battlefront 2 Kashyyyk map, for example, all there really is a sand texture, a few limbs and things, and basic geometric huts. That single map probably took a fraction of the time to make compared to the new Battlefront maps. While the new engines of today are certainly making it easier to create good-looking games, there's no doubt that given the high standards gamers want with graphics and sound, those games take a long time to make. Games today take years to create, and even then they could be criticized because they don't have enough content. This game only has good graphics, they say. Well, don't you think creating lifelike graphics and environments from the ground up in a 10-hour plus game would take a while? Now, if you compare the graphics now to 10 years ago, such as in Battlefront 2, because the graphics were much easier to do, the developers were able to fit 18 land maps, 6 space maps, both the original trilogy and the Clone Wars with many heroes for each, a campaign mode, and a turn-based strategy variant. They simply had more time to do it, and the expectations for graphics weren't as high. For the record, I'm only talking about mainstream games here. Indie titles are of course excluded from this, but there's a reason why they brought pixel graphics back. It's simply much easier to do. They can't compete with EA DICE and their hundreds of employees. Of course, they also do it for the art style, and pixel games are beautiful. They're just not three-dimensionally lifelike. Which is what I'm arguing is the problem. I think the higher technology will make it harder for mainstream developers to come up with high-quality graphical games with a lot of content. One could bring up The Witcher 3 as a perfect example of graphics and gameplay working together beautifully, but that game took 3.5 years to make, with up to over 1,500 people working on that game on and off. Not every company can do that. Unfortunately, I don't think anything is going to change. While the indie scene is growing massively and pumping out high-quality games which are able to experiment with gameplay, I think the major developers are in trouble. People are tired of games that feel too much the same, but they also expect better and better graphics in their titles. Could this lead to another video game crash? I'm not really sure, but I hope that this video was able to give some insight to you fellow gamers out there. This is Thought Crunch. Please subscribe if you'd like to see more content.